like the intros that we just talked about. And so again, hey, welcome to this Up and Running with VUE.JS talk. It's a short half-an-hour presentation on just getting up and running with VUE.JS and how you might switch into it from Angular or React or vanilla or just getting started in JavaScript. And my name is Lee Blazik, and I run a small consultancy on the side from working full-time in the Denver area as a JavaScript subject matter expert. And today, what we're going to do is we're going to do quick about me. Then we'll do about you all in the chats. And then just a quick summary is we're just going to say, hey, what is Vue itself? The Vue CLI, which is how you get things up and running. Some of the coding standards and methods. A little bit on Vuex. And if we have time, some routing. And then we're going to do a demo and go over some current support and other resources. And also, on the line is Sylvia, and even though myself and Tom are in Colorado, Sylvia is actually in Portugal and is currently also a Vue developer and been coming to a lot of our meetups. And since I've been very busy and she has a lot of enthusiasm, there's a demo project that she did the entire thing. I think most of it. I did a little bit, and I'll walk through that because she's interested in presenting too, and I think she'll do a great job. Great.
I'm very nervous, really.
Oh yeah, you're awesome. It's a small group. We're all happy. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
And then the nutshell about me is, yeah, I've worked in all these things: React, Angular, meme stack, front end, Node APIs, a little bit of iOS. I've been doing development in the web for 17 years, since 2003, and full stack since full stack kind of started back in 2013 or 2014. I've worked in every version of Angular since version 0.8 and Node 0. Whatevers, before even the Node Foundation and everything. So I've been in the JavaScript land forever, and different from a lot of people's development paths. They may have started in C# or done a lot of server-side stuff. I started in front end back in the day, dealing with Internet Explorer 5 and 4 and Netscape and God knows what else. Thankfully, we're past that at this point in time. But yeah, I've been working in JavaScript, HTML, and CSS for a very long time. And then everyone just put so we could get an idea about them in the chat, which was great. We've got a mixture of new people to Vue at least, and some experience in Vue and PHP, which is cool. Maybe they can give us some input too. Great. So in fact, I'll just start out with this. Can everyone see the website? I'll take it that's a yes. So Vue, again, is it's a single page app or progressive JavaScript framework, meaning it's similar to Angular, React, or old Marionette and Backbone, where it's a single page app, meaning there's one index HTML file and all the different views and things are loaded into a JavaScript templating engine and like state management machine, as opposed to like a traditional PHP or C# site where when you navigate between pages, you actually reload another HTML page. So whether it's Angular, React, or Vue, you re-render portions of the page, not all of it. And it's really good for like dashboards and things. And in general, single page apps, they're not good for SEO or accessibility. You can do it, but then if that's important, then maybe, with the amount of work, you can make anything work, but that's where single page apps fly usually for dashboards, like bank dashboards or healthcare things, or, Gmail is a single page app. So that's what single page apps are. I think we all know that. And it's open source. And yeah, this is just a home page where to go. And it's a good starting point. I'll give some other links. And one big difference between Vue and all these other Angular and React and these other ones is that it's not sponsored and started by a huge corporation. So I forgot the guy's name. There's one original founder, and he still does like 80% of the work or something crazy. But React is fully backed by Facebook, and Angular is fully backed by Google. And there's advantages and disadvantages to both, but this is a nice, fully open source thing. It's not a huge corporation that could just suddenly say, hey, we're not going to support it. And there's starting to be more like foundation stuff and a bigger community around it. But then because it doesn't have the huge backing of Google or a large company, you know, and it hasn't been around quite as long, there's not as many plugins or libraries, and search engines can be a little bit less, but it's still there's tons out there. So it's still a good thing. And you can see there's even, if you go here, there's free courses on Vue. Oh, that's in the past actually. So, but there's other ones, there's lots of free videos. This is where you'd start. And then back to here, one of the neat things, I try to do less active coding demos, but if anyone's familiar with Angular or React, Vue has, I'll get the page up for it. There's Vue itself, and then there's the Vue CLI, which in starting any single page app project, it can be a whole mess of like configurations and Webpack and Sass and less and unit testing. And until a few years ago, even for Angular and React, it was really hard to get a project started. But now they all have CLIs. So Vue has its very own CLI, and you can see the CLI VUE.JS.org. And the demo project Sylvie and I have was started with that. And I think lately, the Vue CLI is one of the actual best CLI or starting tools, because you can say, make me a new project, and then it'll give you this. You can see I did Vue create test view, and it'll say, hey, pick a preset. So there's a lot of, some people just like Babel, some people like TypeScript. Its default is Babel and just a linter, but you can add in TypeScript, routers, Vuex, which is a more complex state management library, or unit testing end-to-end, and start your project from scratch. And it gives this nice little interactive choices, instead of, even with Angular until years ago, it just made it, and that was cookies, and you had to modify the config files after it, which can entirely be done, but it can be annoying, and there can be a lot of frustrating version errors and stuff. So that's really neat about Vue. They give you all these options, and you can choose what you want, and you can even save it as presets. So if you make a lot of new Vue projects and you always want Babel and Vuex and Sass, you can just save that as a default. And also with this, different, as far as I know, React and Angular don't have one of these. You can optionally do all this same stuff with a UI in your terminal. Once you have Vue globally installed, or the Vue CLI, you can type Vue UI, and you can do all the options and everything right in a browser and save it. This is just one page of it, but you can choose these things, and it'll give you some more details and links to more info. So, new stuff for front end comes out and changes all the time. Even though I've been doing it for a very long time, and some of you might have, it changes every 2 to 3 months. So maybe there's Vue Mega thing, and it's an option in here, and you can see and get links. So it's a really neat way to get started. It's fairly easy. I won't run one, but that's what we started this project, Rick, and I'd recommend looking at it. It's pretty handy. And into coding, I'm just assuming most people are just familiar with some basic, even someone that hasn't done Vue or Angular, some basic vanilla JS and HTML. Essentially with these single page apps, it's just making it a lot easier to write and change the HTML DOM with templates and repeats and variables that change. And if you've done Angular, you'll find Vue is very similar to Angular. It's really easy to switch over. React is easy too, but it's still a bit different. And here's just a whole bunch of examples in one. In templating, and you see I've got a little code example over on the right. And if you look at these examples where there's vbind or vhtml or vif or show, that's almost a direct parallel to like ngIf and ngShow, and some of the other ones. And inputs and outlets in Angular. But I guess we've got 6 basic things here. You can do your double curly braces in your template, which is just like handlebars or Angular these days. Super easy to do interpolation. Message is just a variable on your component. We'll go into some components shortly. And you can also do vbind. You can do expressions in there. basic expressions, not too complex. You can even do dynamic bindings that change as you go down. Sometimes though, you can't usually store, a expression is just raw text or a variable. You can't store HTML there, but you can display that if you do the VHTML bind tag. And if is just the same parallel to Angular's. If it's true, it shows it in the DOM. If it's false, it removes it from the DOM entirely, as our vShow or vHide is the same parallel to Angular hide and show, which means it just hides it with a CSS class, shows it in there. Then you do vbind, it says, hey, make this href, this URL. You can also do, in repeaters, dynamic attributes. You can see right here, maybe you have an array of, who knows, or like an object of like an image that has a source and alt tag and everything. You can rotate through those in certain lists. And you can see there's a nice shorthand here where you can do like this is the full syntax, vbind, semicolon href. You can shrink that to just semicolon href. And then you can do the same with dynamic arguments, which isn't as obvious at first, but once you understand it, you can adapt it. And then here's just like Angular's, click in the parentheses, like your outputs. We have v on this action, a click, do some function, and shorthands and at click, or you can do dynamic arguments with the at event. You can just change whatever argument is the event. Is that making sense to everyone out there? Just because we don't always do questions in the middle, but we have a small group today. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to just pop one out there. And here's just a summary of the shorthands here. Same thing, at event, semicolons for bindings. Now, in event handling, so here you can we're going back to that, that's clicks, like changing focuses or focus or blurs and forms. A v on click, here you can see up at the top, just throwing up a console warning. Inside our component, we'll have a method, warn, here's the function. You pass in you pass in the event from your HTML, and then you can get and prevent the default or do alerts. We define the method warn here. There it is. We pass in the string and alert that message. And one thing that's neat that is different from Angular, last I checked, it changes all the time, is having these little add-ons, these prototypes where you can stop and prevent defaults. On submits and things. This little syntax is very neat and it's concise. And the event's propagation will be stopped on that, or event will no longer reload the page on a submit. You can chain these together. It's also very handy, and it's stuff we do all the time. I don't know how many times I've written event prevent default inside an Angular function or a JavaScript function. And the whole point of using these libraries is to save time, or to me anyways, and do it faster. So these are neat little modifiers that these are unique to Vue compared to Angular and React, to the best of my knowledge. Great. Now, into the components themselves, we've got computed properties and watchers and methods. And so to tie all this stuff together, like in Angular, this would be your class, or React, this would be your component or your functional component. But the new Vue, just saying a new Vue app, essentially, this is a very shorthand, very simple one. We have some data, right? It's hello. And so here up here in our div, hello will display here in the message. And then one neat thing that I think Vue does great right up front, if anyone's familiar with single page apps and even React with Redux, which is supposedly a lot of people say the most performant, it can be very poorly. It cannot be obvious what can cause performance issues in your single page apps when you have like large sets of data, like tables or lists of thousands or whatever, pagination in these things. So in Vue, we have reactive dependencies and methods that go on those and computed functions or methods. So and the one difference is that these computed method functions run only when dependencies in it are changed. And if you do methods of something, they run on every render. So say you have some data, you've got a bunch of different pieces of data on a page, and one of them changes that doesn't have anything to do with this function, it still hits that every time the page re-renders, as where if you do it in your computed functions, it only happens when the variables in there change. So in this case, yeah, if this dot message change, it's gonna run this. But if say there's another piece of data up here called like title doesn't change, that reverse message won't actually run. And this is kind of doing the same thing as Angular's one-way data binding that you specify by default and everything to save on performance. Because even in a lot of apps, you can get a lot of re-rendering and not realize it. So that's one neat thing that's nice, I think, out of the box and fairly straightforward with Vue, as in Angular didn't have one-way data binding, you know, until 3 or 4 years ago, and then Angular 2 came out. And it's actually fairly simple and really straightforward, which I really like. Am I missing anything there, Sylvia?
I'm here.
Okay, I covered all that. All right. So now, just like any single page app framework, you've got a lifecycle methods, which is, you know, every component or piece of the app. Basically, it starts, it renders, does a bunch of other things, which in these, depending on which framework you're using, it can have anything from, you know, 1 to 2 mandatory lifecycle methods to 5 to 7 optional ones. These are the Vue methods, and these are gladly, Sylvia gave me these diagrams. It was great. Thank you, Sylvia.
You're welcome.
Do you wanna talk a little about these, or do you want me to do it?
Go ahead.
Okay, sounds like it's my turn. So, you know, when you're doing a new view, which is just short for like a new component or anything, you've got a creation, mounting, updating, and destroying. And so for each of those steps, those are like basic steps in the lifecycle. There's a before created, before mounted, before updated, and before destroyed. And it's really simple and nicely named, very easy to understand. Because where like with Angular it can be like ng on a init, but then after view init, but then there's like 5, you know, things on a init. So it's really straightforward, nice. You know, you can see what happens here in between the creation and mounting. Like creation initializes the state, it's created, then it compiles the template, then you're mounting, creating the DOM, it's mounted, then you listen for data changes, and then you've got these other lifecycle methods, and then destroys when or if that component is ever removed from the DOM. Like, so really simple and straightforward. And I like their wording and labeling of these too. Pretty good. So that's actually the basics of Vue. So I have, let's see, we're going to talk about Vue and Vuex. What if, Sylvia, are you okay to do a little go over of the project now, or do you want me to talk a little about Vuex? I can do that after too.
I am interested in Vuex.
Yeah, I think it's better to keep the flow.
Okay, so I'll do this now.
No.
And then
Yeah, please.
on the left, I tried to do this nice, there's, again, you can go into all these things in so much more detail, but this was just, you know, an introduction to Vue at least, even if you're more experienced, but Vue versus VueX. So Vue itself is the app library, like in parallel to React. And then in React, you have Redux or MobX or React Easy State or the new hooks and function components, which is how you manage your state. So in Vue, it has a nice basic Vue data and instance that comes out of the box with Vue in that library. And it's also made by Vue is its recommended state management system, which is for more complex apps. It's called VueX. And a lot of people, especially in React, love to just jump in the simplest thing. Redux is very complicated relatively. Like the amount of code you have to write, which the more code you write, the more prone to errors, the more prone to problems, and more code to ship actually. So you don't always, and React comparatively has some basic state in it too. So VueX is optional. Out of the box, I think Vue instance data management is very good, but you still have to pass it between and up and down to components. If you only have a few components or a small component tree, it's just fine, but you do have to pass the data into each component. As where with VueX, it's a centralized store. So like you can, if you've got a tree of like 5 nested components in normal Vue, you have to pass the data up and down between all the components that are nested or under a parent. As whereas VueX, you can just directly access the store. And when I've used VueX in a fairly complicated healthcare app in Denver, we actually did it as a mock backend data app for another big Angular app. And we even had multiple stores and things, which you may or may not need to do, but say you had a bunch of different patients, you need to create a new store for each patient for data isolation and things and persistence. You can even go that far. But so VueX is an option, but basically in Vue, your data management is you have methods, you know, on your app, and you have your computed functions, right? So methods update the data, computed functions access the data to display or change or do things with. As we're in VueX, slightly different, but the data is basically the parallel to state for your entire application, as our data is like on each of your app components. And then getters in VueX access the data. Actions, similar to like a Redux action, are how you take and process things, and mutations update the states. So actions pass things into the mutations and update the state itself. So that's a nutshell difference. I thought it's a neat little diagram there. And it's a lot simpler than Redux or even some of the new Angular NGRX stuff, a lot less code and kind of built in. And it's very comparable. Like moving from Vue to VueX isn't that different, but if you go from React hooks and function components into Redux or to MobX, you're looking at a whole different world of things. It's crazy. Even in Angular, as long as you're using NGRX, it's fine. Or sorry, RxJS. Things are common, but you can switch that around. But this Vue's really straightforward and straight up, which is pretty nice. All right, you're up, Sylvia. Or do you want me to start the app, or do you want to? Well, I'll show it, and then you can start talking about how's that.
Okay. Like I told you, the home page, I didn't look at it, to be honest. So.
Sure. Well, so what we did for this, normally in all these talks, we do a little demo thing. We can show you guys this code, but I took the Vue UI that I showed you, and I made a project with a bunch of I'll get it up here, of defaults. Let's see, and I send out the link if anyone wants it. But again, if I see Edgar's already worked, this may be fairly simple relative to what you've done. Again, this is just an intro talk, but you know, we send out links to all these projects and everything after the talk, but we have all this in a project here. So this is just, I used the Vue UI from the CLI, made a project, but I did install Cypress and some other things. this is the project. We'll send out the link, and here's it running. You know, when you make a lot of these starter projects have a homepage, that's, you know, this is produced by the Vue CLI, just its basic holding homepage. But Sylvia went in and added this. It's just a, even though it looks simple, there's a lot going on here, and you can see how it works when we go through the code. But you know how we pass properties, the HTML, clicks, and things, and from there we can change this. And Sylvia, if you're ready, do you want to show us a bit of the code and show us what's going on?
Sure.
I will.
I had to
See if you
change my setting. Sorry, my internet
Sure,
was kind of. Whoops. Okay.
I'm gonna stop sharing so you can take over. Let me know if you can show your computer.
Well, I guess I'm sharing now. Can you see it?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. So I use Visual Studio Code, and we have this neat thing here to automate the tasks. So to run, you click here. I wanted to show this part too.
Sure, this is great.
Okay, so for the About page, I created a component called About component. And this About component is inside the About page. So I'm gonna go over this. Let me see if I can. Okay, yes. Okay. Okay, so let me talk about the structure for a bit. So first we have the template, and this is where you insert the HTML code. And similarly to React, I think you need to have an outer element. You need to have a div or section or whatever you call it, and all of the things inside. If you don't, you will get an error too. The script tag is where we put our JavaScript code. We can import components. And we can export the current view or component. This is the syntax for importing components. You gotta import the full, using here the path. This is actually a shorthand for the source folder here. So source, components, and your components there. The data is similar to the state in React. So all of these properties here can be changed. You can also have props. And now the props have a little bit different syntax. You can write the type, the default value, and also if it's required. This is handy in projects, because sometimes you gotta make sure you get that property, and this will immediately show an error, and it's good to have that kind of feedback. The methods, like Lee said, it's all of the methods that you use to update the data. So I have the input key here, and I'm changing it on this method. Actually, I don't have computed properties. And finally, it's the CSS. You can actually You can use a bunch of stuff like less or sass or some which I don't even know. I usually at work use this one. And if you write the word scope, that means that the CSS will apply only to this component or to this view. This is pretty good because you don't want to get here and div something and get everything, I don't know, red or something. If you don't use that, if you don't use this, then it will be a huge mess. So yeah. So all right. So good. So far so good. Anyone has questions? I'm not seeing the chat.
It's really good.
It's good. Okay. You can. Any person can say hey or something, if they have questions. All right. So first things first, we have a title here, and the title is inside the data. The syntax to use it is with these double curly braces, and you can actually put codes in front, like and it will render. So this is just the way to say, okay, this is a view variable, and I wanna render it. The VIF directive, I think it's what it's called, directive, can control the visibility of the element. Right now it's true, so you have the message, the hey message right here, and if I put it like this, the whole component is not rendered. What is the difference between VIF or VShow? That's what I want to show. So as you can see here, the component isn't rendered at all. But if we use VShow, it is rendered, but the display is none. And this can make the difference when you have a big page with lots of components and everything is happening at the same time. And I think when it comes to performance, you gotta know what you want to do. But if you use VIF, it will definitely make the whole thing lighter. And if you're not rendering it, so yeah. So that's the main difference. Oops. Okay, so talking about the whole thing here. This is the component that I created right here. It has a template too, it has script, and it has a bunch of CSS. This is the way to import it, and you can use it just like a normal tag. This thing here, it's called, this is a prop from this component, and I'm saying that, okay, the message prop, sorry, for the about component will have this value. So the parent, let's say, is sending that information to the child. So we go over here. Let's close this. We have a prop here. That's a message, and you have a default. Let's say I don't want to send anything. So what we should expect is this default message to be shown. Yep, there it is. Okay, it's all good. I'm worried because nobody's saying anything.
Yeah, it's really good. You're covering all the details, and for everyone, so you notice I could just give Sylvia a break for a minute. That if you remember when I compared the Vue instance data or to Vuex with state, this is one thing that would be different. Say you wanted to make your application larger with to pass between components without Vuex or some other, you can use tons of other state management libraries. But with default way, this works fine if you've got a smaller application or just 3 or 4 levels of nesting. But imagine having a tree of 10 or 20 components, and you'd have to pass the messages all the way down, and then chances are you're going to change them or add on to them, and you're going to lose track. Instead of and the data changes or has to be passed between the components for multiple levels. We just have one level right here. But say you get a really not necessarily large but nested components. That's where Vuex has the advantage of being a central store that you don't need to pass the data in between the components each time. You can just put Vuex and you can just access the state, the global state in the component. And maybe it's 5, maybe data is being changed in a form and that's 5 components up. You can just straight access the state from each component without having to pass it up and down. That's one of the,
yeah.
That would be, this is like the use of the smaller one and where you would use Vuex differently here.
Actually, in the current project I'm working in, we use the store to save the roles and permissions of the different views. So there's a bunch of teams that use that application, and some teams have access to some functionalities and others don't. So you gotta make sure that, I don't know, Johnny from team A doesn't see that button or something like that. So we store that in the Vuex store, so we can later use it everywhere to check the permissions, the array of permissions, and that's very handy, really.
That's a very clever way to do it. Yeah.
I'm not sure if you were going to add something, Lee.
Oh no, I was just saying that what you were saying is a very smart way to do things. Yeah, a good way.
All right. I'm going to put the message again here. I actually put this self-explanatory elements here. So this is the message prop from the component, and this is the number. I wanted to show that we can render a prop or some variable inside the data. So here is message and here is number. It's not actually a prop, but you get the idea. Okay. So Lee also talked about the VHTML directive. The VHTML directive is pretty handy if you, let's say, you have a bunch of data and some of the elements, for example, there's a condition and some of them should be rendered as texts and some should be rendered as input boxes, so you can edit. So VHTML is really cool because you can pass this variable here and a string with HTML code. I put a style over here so you can see the difference in red color. and he will show it like this. So yeah, you can use anything you like. It's plain HTML. So up next, the V on click. I have an example here. Sorry, I have two buttons, and one of them has the V on directive, and the other one has the shorthand. This is just to show the difference. It's the same thing, but you can use which way you prefer. We usually at the project I work in, we use this because it's faster and we're used to it. And the show message is just a hello. So yeah. Okay. Next. Okay, I wanted to do an example showing this guy right here. The V model is the directive you want to use when you want to have two-way data binding. So every time the input content is changed, it will automatically change inside this paragraph. Okay, I'm going to show it. It's like that example that I'm sure React and Angular also love to show. So so it's it's immediate. So this might come in handy, for example, when you wanna you're in a blog or something and you want to write, so like the blog post and you want to see a preview of how that post is going to look, and you can have the immediate feedback of the of how it's going to be. So I'm going to put here just this. And there's another funny thing that that Vue has, and I now ask Lee, you there?
Oh, yes, sorry. I
Um,
had work message me. What was the question?
sorry. Are you familiar with re-rendering in Vue and how it works?
Yes, it should be. It should kick off. Well, and you can change it with a different lifecycle methods. Do you want to go over it for us here?
Okay. Actually, this I'm not sure I have it here. But if I could, I can share it later. There's a way to do it, and you use the force update method to update your component. And what does this do? This will make sure that the component is re-rendered, so remounted. So back to those lifecycle methods, it will go over the mounted hook again, and will perform wherever you have there. So let's say if I use this, I'm honest, I don't know what are the arguments here. So you can actually do this. You have the before mount and you have the mounted, and you would actually write things here, and I don't know, alert, I am here. We usually use this mounted hook when let's say you have a website like this, and you have the about here, but you wanted to send like I don't know, you wanted to change the message there, message equals hi or something, whatever you wanna you wanna put it on the URL. On the mounted hook, you can actually grab these, the query. You use a library called router. I don't know how to say, and you can get these little parts, everything. You can get the full path, just the path, the query, a bunch of other stuff, and you split it, and you can update immediately the view. We use it for automatic search. Let's say you have a form and you put your name and your address and phone, but there's some information that you need to go grab your ID card or whatever. If you use this over here, it will fill automatically the form for you, and you don't lose your previously inserted information. I hope it's clear. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, it's very similar to how you would do it in Angular or React. You're just parsing the query params, and you can access them once the component's mounted and use them wherever you want in your form, or between anything, or redirects, right?
Right. So the force update is the let's say the polite way to do it, but there's another way, and that is using keys and changing the keys. So I have here the input with this starting value, and I binded the key value to this input key over here. This force re-render, what it will do, it will change the key, and when the key attribute of an element in Vue changes, it forces the mount again. So by only doing this, it will go to the original state, which is this. That's the re-render. I wanted to show this because I think it's a very simple way to update your components, and currently I use it mostly for combo boxes that need like when you enter the page, you wanna pre-select that value, and it needs to re-render and make sure it's okay. So I can put box text over here, okay, and it will go back to the original state.
That
What
is
else?
very cool. I hadn't seen that trick before. That's a new one for me.
Okay. Also, let's see. Well, the ad click here. Can you show? That's all I had to show. I don't know if anyone has questions before I say what I'm about to say. You want to ask something? Tommy's sleeping right now.
Yeah. Well, you've done a very thorough job, and the way we did the
Oh,
presentation and the things in the demo, we got it all lined up really well. Like everything we covered in the demo was we also covered in the slides and things, and Katya's giving us a thumbs up. I mean,
Thanks.
pretty good. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry if my spoken English isn't as good as my written English, but
well,
I'm also nervous, so it's not easy.
did a good job. That was a nice presentation.
Thank you.
Yes. Sylvia, no worries about the language. We can understand you perfectly. Okay. There's no trouble. You're brilliant. You should do more of these. Like,
oh God.
Just let you know, like you're doing an excellent presentation. It takes a little. I like to share the fun. Yeah, that was great.
Thank you. I just wanted to say something. I'm going to stop sharing. Okay.
Sure.
So, Lee, when you had that slide with templates, with the code examples, and you had these modifiers, remember, which is like click dot prevent or click dot stop or something. I was seeing some videos the other day about Vue, about the latest release, I guess. And there is actually one modifier that is pretty cool. And I wanted to let you know what it is. It's click dot once. It means that this event will run only once. I'm not sure how this would be used in a real scenario, but I think it's cool. And I'm not sure if the other frameworks have something like this. I'm not aware of that. Exactly. Yeah, it was there, the prevent on line 22. No, sorry, line 19. Yeah. Oh.
Ooh, hang on. We got stuff going on here.
Okay. Yeah. You have that click dot stop over there. If you use the click dot once, I'm gonna actually share it. So click dot once. Again, I'm not sure what is the specific Vue release that supports this, but it's the way you can run the event only once. Like you click a button, you keep clicking, and it won't change again.
Sure, that could be like on submitting payment or something with like credit card codes, and yeah, that's really handy. I've had to write code like that before. It's not much, but still, just having that built in is very handy. I forgot about that one.
I was remembering, like, if you want to submit a coupon or something, and you submit it, and make sure you don't. Of course, you will have validation after, because you're not going to give away free things and such. But I think it's a easy way and a neat way to guarantee that the person won't screw up, you know.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. That is a good one.
Okay.
Yeah. Was that everything you had, Sylvia?
Yeah, I can't show the project, so it's confidential work stuff.
Oh yeah,
so.
your work one, sure.
Yeah.
Well, great. And here I'll send out the link to the slides, and the slide has this link here to the project we made, and then here's just we've actually gone about an hour over, but that's okay. We've used open source, not backed by big companies, Google and Facebook. And in my opinion, the last year it's got this new UI, and it has the best CLI of most of the ones I use. But again, it's not as big or as been around as long as Angular, especially. There's not as many plugins and libraries, but there's still plenty. I'm sorry, I forgot to fill in number 4. And here's some of the resources. VUE.JS is the whole project. There's a bunch of good learning videos at viewmastery.com. I sometimes even go in the more advanced ones and learn something. And I'm a big fan of GraphQL lately, and you can, this is a resource to get, it's a GitHub page, but it's actually just a list of other resources on Vue and GraphQL. And here to go to other places. So that's really handy. And then, yeah, just a quick shameless self-promotion about me. I'm in Denver. I do seminars, conferences, consulting projects. You can follow me on all these LinkedIn, Facebook, GitHubs, I mean, personally, and we can put Sylvia's details out in the post follow-up emails too on LinkedIn and stuff. So if you need help,
Yeah.
you can call us or view Sylvia too or some other things. And then, yeah, we spend a lot of time doing this, and it's just for fun. But if anyone wants to donate to me or Sylvia, if you give this to me, I can forward some to Sylvia or whatever. If anyone feels like there's enough beer money or anything, it's there. If not, it's all free and great too.